guys, welcome back to another episode here on Feathernest Studios, where art and magic combine to create beautiful, beautiful miniatures. Welcome back to another week, another video, another creative part of this project. So my name is Raven and I'm a dollhouse creator and I just love it. I'm an artist. I do all sorts of different things with my life. On this channel, I am building the Spellman Mortuary dollhouse. And if you've been following along, then you know that we are creating the first floor, the first level, and I've been building a lot of walls and really getting the skeleton, I guess, of the house complete. Today we are going to be doing more of that. We are going to be building the entrance way to the Spellman house. So that includes the door, the little hallway, the trimmings, the wall, wallpaper, and floor. So I originally wanted to do the entrance way as well as the little furniture that goes in that room. But the video just turned out to be super, super long. And I'm still kind of figuring out what I want, how I want these videos to go. So I would love your advice if you have any on if you want me to keep doing the details of, you know, the walls, the trimming, or if you would rather me kind of skim over those and get more to creating parts that I have not created yet. Let me know, because I don't want to leave out something and then someone's like, oh, I didn't see how you did that. So thank you so much for following along with my journey. And I just want you to know that every time I get a new subscriber, it literally makes my day. So please definitely subscribe if you are not already. So here we go, on to the video. So we're gonna be working on this little section today in the dollhouse. And if you guys are curious on how I get my walls and how I planned out the house, definitely check out the video in the top right corner. And I go over how I make these walls out of foam board, how I measure them, and really give you the details on getting your walls ready. But in today's video, I'm not going to go deep into that. We're gonna go ahead and skip forward into just the building. So to begin the process of putting down the wallpaper, I just mix some Elmer's glue and water, and that way I have a consistent glue base that isn't just glue, because, you know, if you just glue paper down, you're going to see all the bumps of where the glue is. So mixing it with water really helps just create an even layer. And if you do have bubbles in your project, don't worry about that, because once you put Mod Podge on, all the bubbles are going to disappear and it's going to have a hardened layer. And so with this wallpaper, I actually created it. And if you watch my wall video, I go into how I create my wallpaper on apps on my phone. And this one, I actually use different graphic designs and I put it together to look like what it looks like in the TV show. Because in the show, she comes in like one of the first scenes after she's out on her balcony with Harvey. And she opens up, you know, to the entranceway and switches the light on, and you can see this same floral pattern. And so I couldn't find anything online, so I just decided to make my own. And I think that's good for people to know that you don't have to, you know, buy some big wallpaper book. I mean, you can if that's fun for you, but you can make your own wallpaper, and I think it works just as well. And so now for my trimmings, I am measuring out 3 inches. I always do my wall trimmings 3 inches, and all my walls are 9 inches. So that really helps keep things consistent. And I always double up on, not the bottom layer, but I double up on a lot of the top layers, like the one I'm making right now. And that just helps give it dimension. Because basically with your trimmings, if you're gonna put a wooden trim at the bottom of a wall, it's really up to you what kind of design. And a lot of places have like square or rectangle designs. And for mine, for the entire first floor, everywhere that there's wooden trim, I'm doing the same pattern. And that just kind of keeps it easy and consistent for me. But as I go into the higher levels of the house, I might switch it up with some different patterns just for fun. So now I'm just cutting off the extra trimmings that I don't need from my wallpaper. And I want to share a lesson that I've learned with you guys, so I can save you guys some stress, is please wait for your paper to be completely dry. It is so annoying, but you have to, because if not, if it's even a little bit wet, it's just going to tear in like a tissue paper versus being cut like a paper. So I've learned that lesson the hard way many times. But again, if you're covering up like the windows with trimming, it's not as apparent, but it definitely does make it look a little bit sloppy. So just heads up. And then here I am just coating everything with Mod Podge, which again is one of those things that helps so much when it comes to eating out bubbles. And then I'm cutting out the rest of my trim. And if you've seen my other videos, then you've probably seen this process a lot, but for anyone just now tuning in, just to give you a quick rundown, again, it's just regular chipboard that you can use with cereal boxes or, frozen pizza boxes and whatever it is that you have around your house. And you can't really tell because you're going to cover it up with paint, and it really hides the fact that you're just using chipboard. And for my other walls, I like to use mat board as well because mat board gives you so much detail, and I use mat board for my floors and I also do it for other trimmings, but chipboard works just as well, and it really depends on the style and the type of chipboard that you want. But for all my chipboard, I'm just basically doing the bottom layer, a square on top, and then pillars on each side, or if it's a really long panel, then pillars just between the squares. And I find that I really like that pattern, so I'm just going to continue to use it until a different one inspires me. And now for the floor, I'm doing exactly what I've done in my other videos, and I highly suggest you check out my dollhouse floor video because I take you deep into the painting process and the whole process of how I make all my dollhouse floors. And I give you 2 different patterns in that one, and there's another pattern in the kitchen tutorial. But for this one, I'm just doing the same one that I did in the living room, which is going to be wooden planks. And I'm basically cutting the first layer out of my mat board so that it creates an indentation and gives it depth so it looks like it really is wooden planks. You can also put down, coffee straws or, popsicle sticks as well. This method I find just is really effective. Like, it looks so great when it's done, and it's a lot easier than cutting popsicle sticks. So again, it's whatever you feel is fun for you is what you should do, because that's the whole purpose, right? Is to have fun. And so I did not get this painting on video. I guess I just forgot to paint it on camera. But I do have many videos going over how I paint my floors. So check out that video if you want to learn more about the flooring. And now it's just more chipboard. I have to make one for every side of the room. So that's next to the door. There's already one wall that's complete, and then I have the other wall that has the window, and I'm basically doing the trimmings for all, like, these little pieces are going to go next to the door. And so basically that's what you'll be doing whenever you build a dollhouse, is just measuring out all the little spaces on the walls. And for me, I find it's way easier if I build my wall before putting it up, but some people put the blank wall up and then they put the wallpaper on and the trimmings on. And so again, it's really up to you and what works best for you. And now to make the door, I'm just taking the little piece that I had cut out of the wall to make the door, and I'm cutting out 2 pieces of chipboard that's going to go on either side as basically my base, because chipboard's a lot easier to paint than foam board, and so I feel like it just helps it absorb the paint more and hold that color, whereas the foam board, it can look kind of transparent, I guess you could say. And so once I have that, I'm basically carving out more trimming. This is for the window, and trimming, I realized, is not my favorite thing in the world. Like, even doing the videos sometimes for them, I'm like, okay, more trimming. However, I will say that it has the most reward when it's finished. Like, it's not very fun for me to create them all the time, but when I have it painted and put on the wall and the walls going up, it is the most satisfactory of all the little creations because it really shows the house coming together, So that's what I remind myself when I have to cut out all these little pieces of chipboard. But now I'm cutting out the trim that goes around the doors. So I usually do trim around the windows, around the door, the floorboards, but I have a fancy thing for that one that I buy, but I also sometimes will make it if it's in a place that's kind of hidden and you're not going to see it. very well, then I'll go ahead and put like a popsicle stick. And then for the dimensions of the doors, I'm just using different popsicle sticks and a trimming that goes around the entire piece. So once I glue the popsicle sticks down, I can go ahead and trace out the door again, but this time, instead of it being around the outer ring, I'm doing it inside the trim. And so when I cut it out, it's going to go on the door itself. And now for the back side of the door, this will be the part of the door that's facing out into the world. And I love the Spellman door. It's like this really red, vibrant red door in this black house. And I don't know why, I just love that so much. And it's really cool because it has these, it looks like diamond patterns, like a crisscross pattern. And so to recreate that, I'm basically taking paper, and this is actually weighted paper. It's cardstock, so it's not the regular computer paper because I wanted it to be a certain level of thickness. And I'm basically just lining it up as best I can with the grid below me, and I'm just creating that same, checkered pattern that they have. And this part's really fun because you can create anything. Like, so if you're doing a not fan-based project, but if you're doing your own type of project, you can really get creative with the front door. And so once I have everything glued down, I kind of set that aside to dry. Well, not really aside because I have to flip it back over. And I go back to the trimmings, and a lot of it's bouncing back and forth between the two of, working on trimmings, waiting for some things to dry, seeing what else you can create while you're waiting. And it's so fun. It's the life of a miniaturist. But I first start off with just painting everything a really dark brown, and then I start coming in with highlights of lighter browns, and eventually I go in to all the creases around all the details I made with black paint, just straight black paint to really give it depth. And then I put a little bit of white paint on top, and that kind of gives it more of a ash kind of color. But if you want to keep it more woody, then you don't have to put white. You can just mix white and brown to get a lighter brown. And now I'm using the little hinges that I got off Amazon, and if you would like to check that out, I'll put a link below. And these are for miniature hinges. Obviously, I wouldn't suggest you using them for something that, well, I guess they could be used for anything, but I will say that they are kind of a nightmare to put on. So I first start by gluing them down, and if you're using like E6000 glue, or E600, however you say it, glue, really wait for it. It takes like, I think 24 to 48 hours to dry. And usually I try to just put glue down, and I'm using Gorilla Glue, wood glue, and that does not do the best with metal, I've learned. And so a lot of my hinge experience so far has been kind of stressful because I don't think I wait long enough for the glue to dry. So that is the advice I would definitely give. And to just be really, really patient, because those tiny little nails take so much to get them in. And it definitely was easier getting them in to foam board versus into actual wood. And so how I do it is I have this little tool, and I think it's a sewing tool, but I use the needle to push a hole in it, and then I try to get with my fingers as much in as I possibly can. And sometimes, again, if it's wood that you're pushing that into, it's not going to really do anything, and you just have to hammer it. But it's so tiny, so using a hammer, I use all sorts of weird little things to try and get the hinges in. And with this one, it was hard getting the hinges in, and then once I got them in, it was actually loose, like, because it's in foam board, it's not really grabbing onto anything. So that was when I had to come up with a second plan to make sure that those little nails stay in. And so what I do is I take this cardstock and I basically put paper on top of it just to help keep it in, and I put a whole bunch of glue on it so that it's glued in, at least at the top, and this way it just keeps it more stable. And I did this now, like I think a few months ago, and I've opened and closed the door many times, and everything's been really, really good. Like it feels strong. So I would highly recommend trying this out if your nails don't feel like they're really strong. And then to basically hide this, because obviously you don't want just this paper coming up, I just put the brown paint on it, just like I do the regular chipboard, and that seemed to hide it pretty well. So highly recommend doing this just to help increase the safety of your project. And now to make the tiny little doorknob, I'm just taking a regular toothpick and a bead that I found in my jewelry box, and I'm just gluing it on there. And this one I really love. I really love having beads. It's very, very valuable as a miniaturist. You can use beads for all sorts of things. But I put those aside to dry. And then I took some paper clay for the little door hanger, and I took the end of what would be, I guess, a charm bracelet hook, and I put that inside of a bead. And the reason I used the paper clay was just because it was just too much space for just glue. And then I painted the door, and I had to paint it several times because the paint I have is super transparent. So I just coated it again and again until I got it to where I liked it. And then I glued down little beads on every little cross stitch. And that turned out really well. I really like how that looks. And I got that from watching the show and just seeing that they had their door somewhat like that. And then I took another little bead and I glued on the little door knock. And then for the doorknob, I guess not the handle part, the part where you stick your key in, I just took some foam board pieces that I had left over and I painted those gold. And then I glued the toothpick that I had with the bead on it to those, and that created my doorknob for me. And I'm kind of creating all different kinds of ways to make doorknobs, so I will keep reporting back if I find anything else interesting on ways to create doorknobs. So to make the outer panels for the dollhouse, I'm using chipboard from random meal boxes that I had kept aside just for this reason particularly. And I basically just layer them on. And I think this is really it's a little tedious, but it is very fun because it's so satisfying when you see it done. But you're basically just cutting it and gluing them on one on top of the other. Something I would highly recommend is gluing the plastic side down. It seems to hold glue really well, but it doesn't seem to hold paint very well. So it's a lot easier to paint the chipboard side of it versus the plastic shiny side of it. So that's just something I've learned in my time that makes it just way easier. And then I actually ended up not waiting long enough for my doorknob to dry, and so it came off and I had to repaint it and reposition it. And this is just what happens when you don't have patience like myself and you're doing a project that requires a lot of patience. But then I painted the house black, and I still have a lot more plans for this. I want to create another trim around the door just to help keep any light out, because right now there's a gap between the door and the wall, and I want to just cover that. And then I'm also going to be putting some twine on the door to make it look like vines are growing up along it, just like you see in the show. And I will show that when I do the outer part of the house, and I'll probably do that along with the windows. So stay tuned for that, because that's going to be really, really fun. And then to finish up this, I noticed that my door was opening on its own and it wouldn't stay shut. So I just took a piece of popsicle stick that I had left over and some nails from a nail gun. And I'm using them as a magnet system. And this is something I learned from Bentley's House Minis. So now I'm using my E6000 glue, and I'm gluing down the top of that magnet and just kind of sticking it on and seeing where it sticks. And then I painted over the popsicle part so you couldn't tell. And this worked out really well, so definitely will be using that in the future. But this is what we created today. All right, you guys, that is all I have for you for today's creation. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys are making some amazing dollhouses, really cool little things. And if you guys ever have any advice or tips for me, please feel free to enter them into the comment section. I would love to hear more from other creators or people that just think it's fun and cool and have really cool ideas. So never be afraid to reach out, because I would love to connect with you guys. And of course, subscribe if you want to stick around and see how this whole project ends up being made from the ground up. Literally. And in next week's video, I'm going to be going over the second part of this. So we are going to be making some little furniture to go inside the room. We're coming to the end of the walls almost with that first level, and then we can get into more of the decorative parts. But so definitely stick around for that. Anyway, until next time, happy crafting.